I want you to think about the medications you take every day, not the ones you take occasionally, the ones on your routine list, the ones you have been taking long enough that you no longer think much about them. I want you to hold that list in your mind for just a moment, because what I am going to share with you today comes directly from a document that has been updated and refined by the American Geriatric Society since 1991, a clinical tool called the Beers criteria, which identifies medications that carry significant risks for adults over 65 that often outweigh their benefits. In the 2023 update, reviewed against more than 1,500 clinical trials and research studies, the panel identified dozens of medications that are routinely prescribed to seniors, but should be used with extreme caution or avoided entirely. Today, I am going to walk you through the 5 that appear most often in my clinical experience, the ones I see causing harm in patients who had no idea these drugs carried the risks they do. My name is Dr. James Harlow. I have spent over 25 years in internal medicine, and one of the hardest conversations I have with patients is explaining that a medication they have been taking for years, sometimes prescribed by another physician with the best of intentions, may be contributing to symptoms they never connected to a drug. Falls, cognitive decline, cardiovascular events, fractures. These are outcomes that research now links to specific medications that are still being prescribed and refilled for millions of adults over 60 every single week. I want to be very direct before I continue. I am not telling you to stop taking any medication. I am giving you information that will allow you to have an informed, specific conversation with your prescriber. If something I say resonates with your situation, that is the basis for a discussion with your doctor, not a reason to discontinue on your own. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that now. Every week I publish clinical information that gives you the tools to be a more informed participant in your own healthcare. Subscribe and ring the notification bell. Let us go through the 5. Medication number 5 is diphenhydramine, sold over the counter under the names Benadryl, Z-Quil, and as the PM formulation in many pain relievers including Tylenol PM and Advil PM. Diphenhydramine is a first-generation antihistamine that was developed in the 1940s. It is used for allergies, for sleep, and for cold symptoms. It is sold without a prescription and marketed as safe for general use. What most patients over 60 do not know is that diphenhydramine has a powerful anticholinergic effect. It blocks acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that plays a critical role in memory, cognition, and motor control. In older adults, whose brains are already more vulnerable to anticholinergic effects due to reduced cholinergic activity, diphenhydramine can cause acute confusion, disorientation, and significantly impaired coordination. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that cumulative use of anticholinergic medications, including diphenhydramine, was associated with a 30% increased risk of dementia. The Beers criteria list this drug explicitly as one to avoid in older adults for any indication, including sleep. If you or someone you know is using Benadryl or any PM-formulated pain reliever as a sleep aid, that is a conversation worth having with a physician about safer alternatives. Medication number 4 is proton pump inhibitors taken long-term without periodic reassessment. Drugs like omeprazole, pantoprazole, and esomeprazole, sold under names like Prilosec, Protonix, and Nexium, are among the most prescribed medications in the United States. They are designed for short-term use, typically 8 to 12 weeks for conditions like gastroesophageal reflux or ulcer healing. But a large percentage of patients are placed on these medications and never reassessed. They refill them year after year. The problem with long-term proton pump inhibitor use in adults over 60 is multifaceted. These drugs work by suppressing acid production in the stomach, and that acid has functions beyond digestion. Stomach acid is critical for absorbing magnesium, calcium, vitamin B12, and iron. Chronic proton pump inhibitor use has been associated with magnesium deficiency, which affects muscle function, heart rhythm, and blood pressure, and with significantly reduced bone density. A meta-analysis published in Osteoporosis International found that long-term proton pump inhibitor use was associated with a 33% increased risk of hip fracture in older adults. This does not mean these medications should never be used. It means they should be used for the shortest effective duration and reassessed regularly, which does not happen as often as it should. Medication number 3 is benzodiazepines used for sleep or anxiety. Drugs like diazepam, lorazepam, alprazolam, and clonazepam, known by brand names like Valium, Ativan, Xanax, and Klonopin. These medications are central nervous system depressants. They slow brain activity, reduce anxiety, and promote sedation. They are effective at these goals. The problem is that in adults over 60, benzodiazepines produce dramatically different effects than they do in younger people. The half-life of these drugs is substantially longer in older adults, meaning they accumulate in the body. They impair balance, coordination, and reaction time in ways that increase fall risk significantly. The Beers criteria, citing multiple studies, found that benzodiazepine use is associated with a nearly 60% increased risk of hip fracture in older adults, because these patients fall more, and when they fall harder. Beyond the fall risk, long-term benzodiazepine use is associated with accelerated cognitive decline and has been identified as a risk factor in dementia research. These medications are frequently prescribed for anxiety and sleep in older patients who would benefit more from non-pharmacological approaches, and many patients have been on them so long they do not remember starting. Medication number 2 is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs used chronically for pain. Ibuprofen, naproxen, and similar drugs, which I covered in detail in a previous video specifically about their cardiovascular risks. I include them here as well because the Beers criteria identifies chronic NSAID use in older adults as one of the most consequential prescribing patterns in geriatric medicine, not only for the heart, but for the kidneys. NSAIDs reduce blood flow to the kidneys by blocking the prostaglandins that dilate renal blood vessels. In an older adult whose kidney function is already reduced, this reduction in renal blood flow can precipitate acute kidney injury. Research published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that NSAID use was among the leading drug-related causes of hospitalization for acute kidney injury in adults over 65. Chronic pain is real and deserves treatment, but NSAIDs are among the riskiest tools available for managing it in this age group, and safer alternatives exist that most patients are never offered. Medication number 1, the one I want to address most seriously, is antipsychotic medications prescribed off-label for behavioral symptoms of dementia. Drugs like haloperidol, risperidone, olanzapine, and quetiapine are approved for specific psychiatric conditions including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. They are not approved for dementia-related agitation, confusion, or behavioral disturbances, but they are routinely prescribed for these purposes in nursing facilities and by primary care physicians who are managing dementia patients without access to adequate behavioral support services. The Beers criteria and the FDA both carry black box warnings on these medications for this use. The evidence is unambiguous. Antipsychotics prescribed to elderly patients with dementia are associated with a nearly twofold increased risk of death, primarily from cardiovascular events, including stroke and cardiac arrhythmia. A study published in the BMJ analyzing more than 90,000 dementia patients found that the risk of mortality was significantly elevated in those taking antipsychotics compared to matched controls not taking these drugs. I raise this not to alarm, but because families and caregivers of dementia patients are rarely told this clearly, and the prescription of these drugs for behavioral management is often framed as routine. I want to stop here. Leave a comment below telling me whether any of these medications are on your list or on the list of someone you care for. You do not need to share personal details. Just tell me whether this is something you have been thinking about. I read every comment. Let me now tell you what to do with this information. Step 1. Bring your complete medication list, including over-the-counter drugs, to your next appointment and ask your doctor to review it specifically in the context of your age. Ask, are there any medications on this list that carry particular risks for someone over 60? That question alone can open an important conversation. Step 2. If you are taking a sleep aid that contains diphenhydramine, any PM-labeled product, ask your doctor about alternatives. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, also called CBTI, has been shown in clinical trials to be more effective than any medication for long-term insomnia management, with no side effects. Step 3. If you have been on a proton pump inhibitor for more than 12 weeks, ask your doctor whether you have been assessed for the possibility of stepping down the dose or discontinuing it. Many patients continue these indefinitely simply because no one revisited the original indication. Step 4. If you or a family member is taking a benzodiazepine regularly, discuss the fall risk and cognitive implications directly with the prescribing physician. Tapering off these medications under medical supervision, combined with behavioral approaches, is achievable for most patients. Step 5. If you are a caregiver or family member of someone with dementia who has been prescribed an antipsychotic, ask the prescribing physician to explain the specific indication, the expected duration of use, and the alternatives that were considered. That is a question every family has the right to ask. If this video gave you something worth sharing, please send it today to someone you know who manages multiple medications. This information can make a real difference in their health and safety. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below telling me whether any of these medications have affected you or someone you love. I read every one. I am Dr. James Harlow. Take care of your health and take care of what you put in your body to protect it. I will see you in the next video.